All right, well, welcome again to the Data Science Speaker Series at the University of San Francisco, sponsored by the Data Institute, which the majority of you know is the umbrella organization for all data science and data engineering programming here at the university. We are thrilled to welcome our speakers today, Boustani and Maria Laws. Boustani is a data scientist with a unique perspective that blends technology with a deep commitment to humanity. With over a decade of experience and a master's in systems engineering from George Mason University, Nahid is passionate about unlocking individual potential and driving climate-conscious innovation through data. Maria Laws, an award-winning educator and vice president of learning and development at Ahura AI, is a leader in AI-driven education. With a background in K-12, higher ed, and adult learning, including roles at UC Berkeley and Stanford, Maria is at the forefront of expanding access to learner-centered education. She's also the author of AI Empowered, a practical guide for teachers, learners, and parents in the age of AI. As both a human who very much enjoys being on this side of the dirt, and also a parent, I am very excited about today's talk. And so please join me in welcoming Nahid and Maria.
Yes. Well, so wonderful to be here. Thank you for being here. I know we've been introduced, but I must emphasize that Maria is a great, amazing friend of mine and a like-minded human being. And I'm so happy to share this session with her. I skipped the slides, we've already been introduced. Yes. Has anybody watched the movie Scent of a Woman? Yeah, awesome. So, the majority haven't, you must. It's a 1992 American drama movie where Frank, a retired lieutenant colonel of US Army, decides to spend the weekend in New York. Now, he is blind and impossible to get along with. Charlie, who's a college student and needs to make money, takes on the job, not knowing what he's signed up for. Charlie not only saves Frank's life, but that he revolutionizes his own college. And it's all the story of integrity and what human essence can do. Do watch it. I'd like you to get you started with an experiment, or maybe the beginning of an experiment. You have a piece of paper in front of you. If any one of you doesn't have that piece of paper, please do let me know. I'll hand one to you. Thank you. I was going to say, turn to your neighbor and introduce yourself, but y'all know each other. But we'll see how much you know each other. We're going to take about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes here. Turn to your neighbor, introduce yourself, and tell them about one problem you want to solve in your lifetime. So, not a question of, it's not a math question, it's not a data science question, more like, who do you want to be when you grow up? So tell them about one thing you want to solve in your lifetime. When you're done with your conversation, write a couple sentences about it on your paper and write down your name, preferably in cursive. Yeah, preferably. Please.
I know. Right. Well, like, right I was about to say it's not great, and then like my grandma died, and I was here, and I was like, that's great.
Because I got this question from so many people. You write down on your paper about yourself at the end, but you are sharing it with your partner. You talk about it with your partner. You talk a good amount of time, and then you pick a couple of sentences to describe it, something to remember, and then you put it on your paper with your name.
I can only write my
What's that? That's very much good.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, well, I wrote your name.
Gonna say 1 more minute. Is that enough? Yeah, 1 more minute.
Yes, what's that?
Oh, wait.
Okay. So, you probably figured out by now what I am preaching right here. Yeah. Okay. Well, you've all got a wealth of knowledge and skills. You are in the middle of it right now. Quite feel it yet, because you're kind of wrestling with it maybe, but you do. And I'm here to ask you to be so mindful of what problems you're going to be solving. Maria and I met just about a few weeks ago and spent some, actually, I'll let you know what it was. I'm not keeping a secret anymore. At the Future, that's the same, Future of Humanity Summit.
Why don't we try this one and see if it's a little better? Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, so we spent some wonderful time with people who are sending plant seeds and human DNA to the moon to replicate our Earth. Mind-boggling, right? I didn't believe that. I thought it was a story. It took me a good few hours of spending with them to figure out, like, what are they really doing? So fascinating stuff happening out there. And I'm here to talk about preserving our Earth so that we can continue on our futuristic ideas, right? I'm gonna come down off my preaching tribune and let Maria talk more about this. Yes.
I'm gonna use that. You know, Nahid mentioned that we met a few weeks ago at something called the Future of Humanity event in Washington, D.C. And it was also about impact. And I think both of us really aligned on this idea of no matter what project you're working on, two things were true for us. One, it was rooted in data, having the right thing, the right information to make the right decisions on our path. And two, that whatever it is that we were working on, it was rooted in our passion and purpose, and that it was intended to have a global impact. And as I snuck around the room after Nahid had you all start to talk to each other, I heard a lot of those themes around wanting to make a big impact, right, in an area that mattered to us. And so one of the things that Nahid asked me to share a little bit about is some of the ways that, as she mentioned, she's working specifically on preserving our Earth in a good way. And for me, my focus with my background is more on helping to develop the talents that you all already have, connect them to your leadership skills and passions so that you can actually enact the visions in your head. So that's really kind of where we connect. And I want to share one story of impact of my own very recently in my 3-year position at Apora AI, which is an AI-driven learning company. And we're building a tool, which is fine. But something else came up about 8 months ago when we realized that folks weren't even really ready to hear about all the kinds of AI tools because they didn't really know what AI was. I would hear people say, oh yeah, we have AI. You're like, what does that mean? Like the two most recognizable letters, but no one really agrees on what it is. And one of the groups that I got to be associated with was a group of women farmers in Zimbabwe. Very far away, obviously. I am not from a farming background, and yet they wanted to know more about how AI could help them grow their agribusinesses. Agriculture across not only Zimbabwe, but many African countries is in the top 5 things that people do as a job. And primarily, I think over 65% of farmers within Zimbabwe and across Africa are women. So this was something that already speaks to me in many ways, that we're growing communities, we're getting people empowered to even think bigger about their businesses, and that this could have an impact across entire countries. However, what I also realized was, yes, I can teach you what AI could do, tools to help you grow your agribusiness in theory, but I don't know what data sets are available in Zimbabwe that are accurate, that would actually be of use to you when I teach you the tool. And we realized there was not yet any really reliable data set in Zimbabwe. And we weren't really prepared to build that. That wasn't our capacity load. But luckily, one of the folks at our company had been at NVIDIA before, knew someone that had left NVIDIA, went to Kenya to start a data agriculture business called Amini. You've probably heard of Amini AI. They're winning quite a few awards, and their founder is also winning quite a few awards for the work they do. We got on a call to see if we could think about what could we do to help these women do what they wanted to do. And instead of just giving us advice, they were so taken by our passion for the project, which was just a side thing we were doing for free, just because we cared about what we were trying to build and prepare the world to use. And so they offered to help us build the first ever data set for these farmers within Zimbabwe. And I'm getting goosebumps talking to you about it because I know that sounds like a small thing for 70 women, but you and I all know here they're going to be impacting in ripples across the entire country, and that if we could make this partnership work on a small scale in one country, that in part of East Africa, we could do that potentially for others as well, not just in Africa, but also in Latin America and across the world. And this is really where Nahid and I started talking about what does impact mean to us? How do we connect our day-to-day life in our small little zone, but how powerfully connected it is to all the big things and how every big initiative starts small. And so this idea that a former high school teacher, then university professor at Cal, now at an AI company building courses and now helping design their product. Now we're teaching courses again about AI tools, but now we're impacting an entire country. I mean, that was not on my card if you'd asked me to write it the first day. So this is where we're starting from, about how do you start to think about the impact you could have that's going to be well beyond what you can imagine right now. I'm going to turn it back over to Nikki.
Yes. Just continuing what Maria mentioned, I want to say that I foresee this craving to happen for everyone. It was not something that I saw when I started my career. You know, you learn your skills, you know how to program, you know how to code, what you want from your job is a place that you could, put your skills into it, what you've learned, you want to actually implement it, you want to get some visibility, you want to get a good pay, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm on it. But as human beings, and by experience, that's not going to last long enough. It's not. Sooner or later, we're all going to crave that we want to do something bigger. Or as Steve Jobs said, make a dent in the world, right? And it's not just Steve Jobs. We'll all feel it. We'll all feel that craving at some point, and we want to do something. So it's good to consider it early on. Don't dismiss it. Just think about it. Put it in the background. Consider it. You see that burning globe? I do feel exactly that way about what's happening to our Earth. And climate change, it is a very real thing that's happening. It's not just a looming threat. It's a reality with already devastating consequences to communities and to resources for us. Again, I was talking to Maria, and she showed me something about carbon footprint. You worked on a project about carbon footprint, right? I loved what she observed about carbon footprint, and I do want her to show you that platform. Let's look at that. I have it here, of course.
So as I mentioned, I started as a high school teacher for over 20 years. I taught every science subject, but primarily chemistry and life sciences, but basically 20 years I taught all of them. But when we started teaching about climate change, I know you can't remember this time, but there was a time when we didn't teach about it. And remember that United States is still one of the top 3 climate change deniers across the entire world. Us, Australia, Brazil right now are, in terms of just refusing to do policies the way we need to at the urgency level we need to. So I wanted to start talking to students about it, but I didn't want to start with the chemistry of it. I want to start with the people part of it. And so I just happened to find this data visualization. It's a little bit out of date and it's not showing numbers, so this is a qualitative one. But it started a conversation that helped us dig deeper into both the chemistry of it, science innovations that could be possible, but also the other roles that are necessary in terms of filling the gaps, the educators, the artists, all these things. We had some other things in mind that we wanted to talk about where we all had a part to play, even if we weren't super into like wet lab work. And so the thing about this, if we start back at the beginning, we refresh it, Nahid, I think, just so it doesn't show any of the, yeah. This is sort of kind of the basic map, although we also know it's still wrong in terms of like sizes of countries. But you can see that if we press on the, let's just go with the emissions one, yeah, you can see already the countries that are doing the most emissions. And it makes sense. Two of the biggest economies, we're talking China and the United States. So this makes sense, right? This is why every time we talk about a climate change initiative, these are the 2 people that have to be at the table, or else it feels like, what are we doing? But if we went over to people at risk, yeah, look at this right here. Talk about a mic drop gasp moment. About this explains, without me ever having to be the teacher about it, how it can be that a country with so many resources and that is also responsible for many of the issues that we're having doesn't seem to be attached to fixing it. Because again, that positionality of not necessarily experiencing it. Now, you and I have seen differences now in the last 5 years, particularly around a particular topic, specifically fires and also floods. We're seeing it more, and that's allowing some better conversations to happen. But this really helped us center our conversation about not only the science of it, what the problems are, but the part that I often find is kind of missed in education spaces is, what's the next? What's the action? What's the call to action after that? And so this is sort of where we started, was this very simple data visualization that got everyone to come to conclusions on their own, and more importantly, to ask bigger questions. The why, the how, what next? And this is where Nahid and I spent quite a bit of time talking in DC over breakfast, lunches, and more. I'm going to hand it back to you, Nahid.
Yes. So that was a beautiful graph. That's an amazing graph. I love that it's perfectly visual. I know that it's not quite up to date, I could see that it wasn't reflecting how Africa has progressed in the past few years. It's actually leading a lot of sustainability and climate change endeavors, winning lots of awards for that. So I can see that it's not completely up to date, but, and it was all about carbon footprint. And if you go to the climate impact conversations and kind of work that's being done, decarbonization takes the biggest slice of the pie. It's at least the biggest buzzword. I'm sure many of you, all of you maybe, have heard about that, decarbonization. But I've got that fire in there. So, and you're in California, I'm from DC. I only get a little bit of the smoke that you create sometimes. Somebody drops their cigarette, doesn't pay attention, or does a party and doesn't pay attention, plus a lot more, of course. You're not responsible for all of it, but I get a little bit of the smoke coming, touching me, but I'm sure you all experienced the smoke, the pollution. And I want to say that wildfires, although they're not, as big of a name as decarbonization that we're speaking about, but they are one of the biggest contributors to the particulate matter pollution in the air. Basically, 1/3 of all those pollution is coming from wildfire smoke. And although the contribution of wildfire to CO2 emission, again, CO2 emission, that's another big buzzword that you're going to be hearing, or maybe you've heard so far, emissions. The contribution of wildfire to CO2 emission is completely different. It's not a direct contribution, but it is through both burning the land and greeneries and creating that CO2, and also eliminating the very life that's transforming CO2 to oxygen. So it's like a two-way thing. And why did I bring it up? I want to emphasize on wildfires. Just want to say, if you haven't heard too much about wildfires' contribution to climate, here I am, trying to make it bolder a little bit in here. And that calls us to take action. It all comes down to lots and lots of action, from the human level, individual level, to policy level. And I have a great climate action simulator here I want to show you. I found it fascinating. It gives a good view of, what happened to it? It's called En Route, or On Roads. Actually, it was En Route when I meant that, but it's On Roads right now. That's a sophisticated online platform that's being used multiple times during the Obama administration for policy decision making. It's being used a lot right now in different companies for education, still for policy decision making. And what I love about it is that, first of all, it's very comprehensive. It's got a lot of detail going through in it. Second is that it's all built upon data, right? We're not looking at quantitative sort of stories here, but you can already see that these are graphs. And just a quick touch on it, you see all these factors that are contributing to climate. And if we change that, you'll see how it's, what are some of these, they're tied to policy. They're not tied to amount of coal or something. Like it says taxed at the status quo. And if I go lower, very highly taxed. If the coal is very highly taxed, people are gonna use it less. It's highly taxed. And if they use it less, it adjusts all these graphs accordingly. It lowers the greenhouse gas net emission. It lowers the predicted temperature increase by 2100. Same with oil. It's at the status quo. If I make it highly taxed, everything changes. And this is where people policies, numbers are connecting, right? And if I make oil subsidized, it's subsidized. It's not that expensive. People keep using it. They go for it. And that brings us higher at the expected temperature increase by 2100. What I'm showing you here is that, again, these are all tied to the policies, and we do come down to the policies. So we're technical people. Yes, we can create lots of tools and kind of go for it, sell it, make a whole business out of it, get all the people to, use apps, lower their carbon footprints, lots of apps out there, right? You can monitor your behavior and all of that. But at a global scale, it comes down to policies, the people who are sitting at the UN and making decisions in here. And I want to show you one more thing. I love this tool, and I definitely wanted to share it with you, that it's got tons of graphs, tons of policies. You can change the policies, you can look at the specific graphs and see how they're affecting, the relationship in here. Now, wildfire isn't here yet, but yet. I've got the secret news that it will be here pretty soon, in a few months, which means I've got some great competitors out there, which is awesome. We do want competitors, somebody who pushes us and creates momentum for us. I'm going to hand it over to Maria. We want to see who are the stakeholders in this game. I kept saying policymakers, and we talked about people, but just maybe a little bit of a guess from your side. Who are the stakeholders in this whole policy and climate impact game?
Absolutely. One of the things we'd like for you to do right now, and you can do this in your groups where you're sitting, maybe you turn your chairs around and switch it up a little bit, however you want to. We'd like you to do a little bit of brainstorming around the types of roles or careers or expertise, maybe the way to think about it, that we need to bring to the table to actually create meaningful change for the future and for now. Who are the people that you need on your team, in the room, not only to build what you're building, but to have the impact you're envisioning? Does that help get you all started? Okay, so maybe open up your groups a little bit to maybe 4 folks. Does that work? And that makes us get to use this cool chair moving around. Okay. You're spinning around in that. So very excited. All right, here we go.
I promise. I don't know See, that's why. I think so. Probably hate it. I just yeah, obvious too. You guys do it. Yo, look at that. I I've never seen a lecture where I hate everyone's yeah. In America. I like other countries. It's possible small. But yeah, I feel like okay, stakeholders. No, stakeholders policy. Sorry, lobbyists, politicians. I feel like are we peer pressure? So just come into the conversation. That's so true. Some like tax
Let's go ahead if we can and come back to center. We know it's a good question, but we have to get around the conversation, so this is good. All right, so I'm going to hand it back over to Nahid and get us into a bigger conversation that you just now started with your friends. All right, here we go.
Yeah, so global climate stakeholders. The first thing, how many of you are already working, like, at a job, at a corporate? Not yet, maybe. Okay. So stakeholders are your bosses. All of them are your bosses. You want to see all of them as your bosses. And you have a lot to do with all of them. We start with the stakeholders. We think about the stakeholders all the time. So once who are the global climate stakeholders? Policymakers. Looks like I have an affinity with them. They come up first. Earth scientists. Yeah, earth scientists. Technologists. There's a lot more technologies than just sciences that are going towards climate impact. Data scientists. Indigenous people and communities. They are absolutely important. They're close to my heart. We do want to preserve them. We also want to empower them. We want to learn from them. And it's tough because they're different species. They're a lot more human than we are. We're a lot more AI-ified. We are. They're a lot more human than we are. They deserve tons of respect. But we also want to empower them, we want to teach them. It's a complicated, amazing relationship if you ever have the chance to work with them. Workers and trade unions, because they can actually team up. Women, women are actually a whole group to be conscious of. Artists, if you have come across any climate artists, and if not, there are tons of them out there. They're amazing people, fun, and sophisticated. And mindfulness communities. So my exposure to mindfulness community came from the people in Europe that I worked with. And believe it or not, they are approaching climate change through mindfulness. A little bit of a cult kind of getting together and wanting to do something, but they're powerful. They can bend your mind. They can bend your mind and convince you that you must behave differently towards Earth. And they take a lot of rituals with nature. Not all of them are just, religious people. They're absolutely well-rounded technologists and also, people who have been working in it, but they do root in their mindfulness practices. Yes, they have power. Yeah. Oops, I should have done that.
Please.
You know, Nahid and I were talking a lot about my experience with high school students, because when you think about it, I do feel like centering there some of our conversations about how to make change happen is important. Because it's a group that's very heterogeneous, that may or may not be super interested in listening to you. They're required to in order to graduate. When you think about the general public, you have various levels of interest or engagement or understanding. If you don't feel like you can understand it, or you already think you don't really like science or whatever, you already kind of move away. And so the two things that I was really surprised when my high school students and I shifted from thinking just about climate change knowledge as content standard related to chemistry, chemical reactions, and things of that nature. But moving past just the impact on people, but also solution-based things. Not only did we start doing a deep dive into what's happening around the world, as Nahid mentioned, Africa is a place of, the entire continent of Africa is a place of a lot of innovation. And one of the things that my co-founders of my company and I talk about is how differently different regions deal with innovation hubs. Here in America, it tends to be in corporate spaces, right where we live in the Bay Area. We are tech central, at innovation central around science, right? When you move more toward Asia, you see it more centered in the government spaces, which makes sense for how the system's set up there. But when you're looking specifically in African communities, it's community-based. It's a problem right now. Who in the community can do it, and this is what we're working with, you know, within these limitations, and we're going to figure it out because the infrastructure isn't there for a lot of historical reasons, and we can't wait for it to be built in order to fix the problem. And so thinking about that, students and I realized that some of the things on here, one, artists, who is a way to engage the public in a non-threatening, low-stakes way. If you look at one particular artist you might like is Nicole Kellner. She took this really famous data visualization of the temperature shifts on the planet over many decades, and she did it as a watercolor. It's the most pretty thing ever, but then you start asking questions. Oh God, and then you start realizing, although it looks pretty, the data there is quite serious. Again, asking questions that engage you to go a little bit deeper than you thought you might want to, that you thought you might care about, but now you do. And the other one that my students and I found when we started looking at, hey, they would say to me, Ms. Laws, there are actually like community programs right now that will put solar panels for free if you fill out this form. They'll do this for you if you do that, which would actually help with the problems we're talking about, fire abatement, other things. However, if folks don't know about it, they're not going to take advantage of it. And then that government program, which took hours and hours of expertise to get on the books, is now taken out of the budget as if it never existed. So the idea of community organizing, something I had never thought of besides getting votes, is something that's a really important connector to take all the policy work and science work happening and actually make it real on the ground. And so I want to turn it back over to Nahid to talk more about that work.
Well, I actually want to ask if, what have you come up with that we haven't included?
Yeah.
I don't know if we would consider lobbyists under policymakers, but we definitely put that on our list as well.
That's correct, yeah. Wait, there's someone to watch. Not to work with. Not my favorite. Anyone else? Please.
Our group mentioned communication skills, because all the technology isn't going to happen unless it's communicated effectively to the people who have to.
Yes, I love that. I like to actually make it, maybe communication skill, maybe a little bit of a word that has been used too much. You know, words lose their power when they're used too much in too many contexts. They don't have that power. They don't quite convey what they need to convey. But it's about that interconnection between people. So we're bending minds. The more of us are getting together, the more of us are putting ourselves towards a cause with good interactions. Not like communication just to get something done, but a heartful connection that we're all together, like aligned from purpose to our time, to our technology, to where we're going. That creates a bigger, that creates a quantum type of energy. So we're talking about communication skills, but let's make it like a quantum connection.
Let's call it quantum connection. We're moving way faster than we think. I'm an anti-AI by heart. Don't kill me, but I am. But I just opened my eyes and I'm like, goodness, I'm behind. AI is everywhere, doing everything. It's even doing the data science work. You know, we created that, data scientists, but now it's doing the data science work too. So it's everywhere. And if you ever hang out with super pro AI people, they're really going for it. And that's a different vibe. And it was hard for me to connect with them. It was hard for me to have a heartful communication with them. Like, understanding rather than just arguing who's right and who's wrong and why should AI be used and not be used, and okay, do we use AI for education? What are the threats that are out there, the jobs? Not these typical conversations, but hey, it's something real that's coming. It's taking over our imagination. It's diluting our cognition right now. And how do we work with that? How do we work with that? It's how do we keep ourselves as humans? And for me, keep our superiority to that. I want to stay superior to AI. And it's so badly competing with us. But there's still something about human essence that helps us keep that dimension strong and going. Let's call, instead of communication skill, let's call it human essence, quantum connection. Just being there in that presence and allowing it. Yeah, that's my word.
If I may, as the AI person on the team here, that's how we met. If I can also say, you know, when I got into the AI arena, because that's how I'm thinking of it, it wasn't because I was necessarily into that. I was a really happy professor at UC Berkeley. I also had a professional dance career. I've got all these things going on that are connecting and amazing and wonderful. And AI wasn't necessarily part of my kind of sphere of thinking. However, it's very clear, and I think this goes to your point about lobbyists being on this list, that for better or for worse, all these things move the dial, however you want to think about it, right? And so we have to think about that. And so I thought, wow, I have an opportunity here to help ensure two things. One, that we're creating AI that is mirroring what we want to make possible. Like the idea that more data science projects that people have in their head, but they haven't had access to the training to really make them. Maybe this lowers the lift a little bit. Right, lowers the cost a little bit to get that idea out. That's a what is possible that I want to be a part of. But just as seriously, I want to be somewhere on this leading edge where we're talking about the what is missing, whose story is missing, who is missing in the room, and what use case is missing in the room. Because I can tell you right now, as much innovation happens here, do you think there's any large language model being made for agriculture here right now? No, it's like less than 5% of our GDP, our economy. Whereas, as I just said, in another space, another entire continent, it's in the top 5. So there's use case issues if we are not dealing with that. And I know, and I think speaks to this as well, the idea that the idea of innovation is you move fast, you break stuff, and then you fix it. Well, yes, and now you made a thing, and now you just keep tweaking it. Like there's things embedded in there. So the sooner we can start that conversation, the better it is for everyone. And that's how I started there. But I really do think about what you said there about this idea of, I don't know if lobbyists belong on the list. Yeah, they do. For better or worse, they move the dial. And that's another space to think about your impact in either direction, what you're trying to do. I would also say one other thing. I'm laughing that I didn't demand that educators be on here too. Oh my goodness. Talk about like a fail. And I will say that because in my company, I'm in the product dev department. I lead the machine learning team. I'm in like the sciencey. And yet a whole other side thing has come up in that business leaders, education spaces need people to help translate what AI language and what life is for what does that first step look like with a student, with an employee that wasn't planning on doing this. And so learners and educators are part of this as well. And that's why, of course, you are here to help us with the next piece of this conversation.
I apologize. I tried to eradicate person, and it didn't work out.
I didn't put teachers on there.
No, that's perfect. Okay. Yeah, back to our talk. Kind of focusing a little bit more on climate. This is Impact Ventures. That's where I am putting
That's the logo where I am putting my efforts into. So according to United Nations data, the Earth's temperature is rising in the past few decades. We've all heard of that, but I'm not sure how many of you heard that July of 2023 and 2024 have been actually the hottest months ever so far. So we're talking real. And there's so much synergy going on here. So that causes a lot more severe heat waves to happen, sea levels rising, storms, glaciers are melting down. And again, glaciers are far away from me, but also a lot more wildfires happening, which is closer to us. And not only it's affecting our ecosystem, but that it's affecting our food supply, water resource, and generally the overall well-being. It's lots of actually negative impact on the health here. And data science is something that gives us insight into what's happening in here. Super important. Without us, without data scientists, seriously, there is not numerical proof out there. Organized, there are numbers out there, but not organized and useful. So you are all absolutely needed. And here you can see I stole this one from internet. Not the best image, but it was easy to find it somewhere, and I thought that this was speaking pretty well, so I included that. These are the types of, you can see the types of data that we are collecting for climate impact. High resolution climate data, which is about precipitation, humidity, wind speed, temperature. These are climate data. And then we also collect topography data, the elevations. That matters, that makes it complete, it affects the direction of the wind, and then the direction of the wind is affecting, how, this is just one of them. Let's say compared to wildfires, it's affecting how the wildfires are being, directed, and how severe they're gonna get, and how fast they're gonna get, go out of control. This is just one example. We're also collecting soil data, the vegetation, the dryness of the land, that all affects the type of problems that we're going to be facing. Land use, and of course we get them all together, build a lot of predictive tools, and try to gain insights into the causes, and come up with measurements that we can actually adapt ourselves to the changes that are happening, and take proactive measurements to control whatever that's happening. And then all of that cause and effect that we're understanding, again, loops back to the type of data that we're gonna go after. So it's a whole, the cycle is not being shown here, but it's a sort of self-feedback loop in here. And I thought this was a nice picture to show that what are we doing with what type of data we're collecting for climate, and what do we do at the end with that. Lots of risk measurements, risk control, and proactive measurements to find out how we can mitigate those risks. And then we come up with data-driven solution. Data-driven solutions. So prediction is one of them, but there are tons of complicated, fascinating solutions out there that are being built with data that are outside the conversation of this class. We're going to get to the nitty-gritty of the technical stuff that I probably don't know, and I might have to ask you about it, so I'm not going to get into that. But data-driven solutions, energy consumption optimization. These are big categories. Sustainable agriculture, big categories. Again, data-driven solutions. I'm not talking about sustainable agriculture through,
better watering or creating organic products or, how to preserve the land or so. I'm talking data-driven solutions for sustainable agriculture. So fascinating. There are tons of interesting things happening here. Renewable energy, severe weather control, reduction of vector-borne diseases. Yes, those insects are getting a lot more resilient as the temperature is rising. They're just adapting themselves and growing and living easier and faster. So we're facing a lot more diseases because of the change in the temperature. Pollution, and last but not least, wildfire management, because this is something that I am working on. Okay. Reflections. Let's see.
So we've got about 5 more minutes left before the Q&A, it looks like, or maybe we can go over a little bit more and make sure we get to everything you need. But what we really want to do is circle back to what you wrote on your cards. Take another look at what you have started with. And what we really like to be thinking about with all of you, Nahid and I are here to be of support to you. Obviously, we have a whole community here within your program. But we want to talk about building community within this group that's here today. Because the reality is, many of us in our school life are used to doing things on our own. We're driven, we do the thing. But the goal or the key to global impact is communities. It's folks that either help you with a project, suggest someone to help you with a project, or are that person that keep you focused on celebrating the small steps that keep you going even when things are hard, because it is hard. Every bit of work you do is hard, and every bit of work matters. So what we'd love for you to do is take a moment with the folks around you, and we want you to think of a one act, if you will, for this next month. What's something you're going to do on the path to that? How are you building community? How are you going to be moving forward with what you have on your card and the people in this room? Are you all going to start a group? Are you going to exchange information? What are you going to do to help ensure you keep moving forward? Sound like a plan? Okay, let's take about 2-3 minutes, really short, and then we'll move back to the rest of it.
My friends like, you have to it's not very and I it was really I grew up the bigger thing this is probably going to be I don't know.
Okay, I'm committed to the center. I really don't want to because it sounds so hopeful and excited. How are y'all feeling here? Do we get some thumbs up? Something I would have never done before in Zoom life, but now it's all I do. We're good. So I'm going to turn it back over to Nahid to kind of center us out around other ways we can build community, around the impact you want to have, and the skills you need to develop in order to do it.
Okay. So I can share a little bit about my own story. I want to say that when I am leaving here, I am going to visit and meet with, have you heard of 90? 90? No cheating. Okay. So after here, I'm going to meet a dear friend, a new friend that I've just got to know, and I'm absolutely grateful for that. And I have got to know about them through another person, through opening up, talking to another person. Yes, I kind of went after that original contact of mine for a year. I met her in a summit, took some photos with her, sent it to her. She didn't remember me, didn't reply to my LinkedIn message. Too important, of course, she is. I'm not making a joke about it, not too, very important. She is, and she didn't have time, but when you're inspired, you're inspired. I couldn't let go of her. So I found her somewhere else and looked at, one of her LinkedIn posts was saying, yeah, she's going to that place and summit and to that conference. And I'm like, I'm after. And I meet her there, and finally we make a conversation, a connection, and then again, all throughout that event, I'm thinking, don't forget, don't get distracted, don't party around, remember, you want to go after her. And I did, and amazingly, I went to a lunch with her. She introduced me to 2 amazing other friends, people. I am just learning as I am going around and having fun, not separately, not having fun here and working here. I'm going around having fun, meeting people that I want to meet and enjoying their company. And what actually, a little bit of an exposure, that what I appreciated the most was that we're all human at the end. And while they are doing significant work for the world right now, they still gave me their own time. And I still got to enjoy their company and make some connections. And I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know how to make that happen, but I had the drive, I had the dream, and I had that, I will figure it out. Let's figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. So I hope that you will also leave here with that type of mindset, with a crave, with a big crave that you cannot sleep at night. Just saying that I really think that it is possible. I want to do that. I've learned something, and I want to go after it. Hoping that's going to be the case. And what else do you want me to talk about?
No, I think that was beautiful.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So these are some of my reflections, and I'm hoping that you will leave here with some good information about how you're connected to your own deepest desire, and how you can connect that one to your skills, to the opportunities that are out there,
and to the people that are out there who may, even if they look so far-fetched, they're not. We're still human. And yes, let's leave it.
Excellent. So I know that we're going to head into our Q&A, but I'm going to ask for a total millennial thing, which I am not, but I can't do the selfie for the drama. Can we just take like a picture of you all looking happy and excited to be here with each other? Ready? Okay.
Yes, arms up, please.
All right.
Arms
So
up.
some smiles. Are we ready?
We need some music here. Oh.
All right. Data science. Woohoo! Okay, people. We got it better than that. Okay, that was lovely. Thank you so much.
So you like what?
Yes.
No, this is you know what's in
Oh, yes.
All right.
Forgive me, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay. If, here we go. If there are questions, you know where, students, you know where to come.
All right, first brave person, walking quiet. All right, love it.
Hello. Am I on?
Yeah.
Hi. My name is Georgia. She, her pronouns. So I really liked the story about helping Zimbabwean farmers understand like how climate was affecting them. In order to train and create these AI models, it requires like very large and increasingly large amount of infrastructure, from like hardware to power to labor. And once that's done and the model is there, sure, but we have to do that again to update it, right? So how can we better serve communities and uplift them, not through just like the education, but how do we ensure that the infrastructure is available to them, that they're not beholden to just another boot somewhere else overseas?
Absolutely, and I can speak to that a little bit, not necessarily from my company Ahura, but from volunteer work I do with another group called A for AI, where we are actually helping to build data centers. It's called the Compute Project, specifically in Nigeria, where my co-founder of my Ahura company is. We also work on this other project together, and that is a lot of the kind of roles that Naheed mentioned earlier that are not necessarily all science, although my co-founder is an engineer and MBA. That is not who we need to talk to. We need to talk to government officials. We need to talk to business people that are willing to fund it, to find the land for it, to help us navigate all the levels of sort of political savvy to get something moved through the government, all the appropriate sort of paperwork. And that is where we're at right now. So we are literally in conversations with government folks. And what we bring to the table is a plan. Because again, the heart of a lot of AI structure is here in terms of that. So that's what my co-founder's originally from NVIDIA, so he's got that sort of compute background. So in our mind, we've got a three-pronged approach. One is the education around actual tech skills, education around leadership skills, including kind of purpose, mission, ethics, and also communication, other things of that nature. And the third leg of that three-legged stool is the compute project, where we need data centers, where folks can actually go, I don't know if you know this, but Wi-Fi itself is a different kind of expense plan. So it's just, even having electricity, let alone Wi-Fi, is not a thing. We need a place where folks can go in their neighborhood to build the things they want to build, and build along with them also the skills to do it. So that is a separate thing, you're right. The one by itself isn't enough for the impact we want to have. So you have to engage governments, and you can't do it yourself. You need local folks. So a lot of our work is trying to find the local folks and then bringing our kind of reputation to bear and credibility, and then hopefully the funding space is coming from the government sources. Or also big groups here, like Mozilla has a big one that we're working with MacArthur Genius Grant, MacArthur Fellowship, or MacArthur Foundation. There are many groups here that are looking to fund projects there.
Thank you both for your time.
We can add a little mindfulness aspect to that. Yeah, just a quick note. If you are going for transformation, big transformation, and you're dealing with some with a system that is perfectly different from you. You start from where they are. You don't go with your own huge ideas and say, hey, let's do this, we want to do this. You start from their mindset, where they are. And this is the first step, and this is crucial. No matter what type of technology you're offering, no matter how awesome your ideas are, and no matter how great you are going to be helping them, you still start from where they are. And we are in a very peaceful environment. You're all listening to me. Thank you so much to us. But you're in real world, there's a little bit of a fight going on about our ideas, how to do it. We're all trying to evolve and be more conscious, but we're still dealing with, it's a little bit of a hustle. So you always start from where they are. Acknowledge it, even if it looks ugly, and even if it looks outdated, oh, they're wrong. It's just, no, they're not. Everybody is right in their own place. Everybody is right in their own place based on their own knowledge and consciousness and everything. You must start, acknowledge them, and then offer something. So, a little bit of a side note.
I think that's actually a central note, Nahid, really, because even if you feel like they're not saying the right thing, you build trust in your ability to help them by addressing needs first, and then helping them see a bigger vision, or maybe helping them tell you that's not the vision. So I appreciate that you brought that up.
Maybe not, but first I want to say thank you for coming to our school today to speak. It was very interesting to hear about the impacts that data science and AI can have in the world. That's an important driver for a lot of the people who are here. And I had a question when looking at the stakeholder slide. There was, I noticed that we had Indigenous people separated from data scientists and like other pharma science fields. But I want to understand if part of your project, and I think you also answered this when answering this question, but I want to understand the role of educating like Indigenous people and like bridging and helping Indigenous people be a greater part of the sciences as well as the agricultural role.
Take a first. Oh, sure. So I'm involved in a research project right now at Stanford, but I'm not doing the data piece of it. What this group has done, it's called it's a VMware lab, it's called the Women's Leadership Innovation Lab. And I was like, there's a whole lab studying leadership and specifically for women. Don't worry, it's not special for us. It's just that we might need a little bit more of that coaching because of the way the structure of the world works right now, right? But my point being, we can teach data skills and that's wonderful, but leadership skills are what help you drive conversations, not just take orders, if you will, do the directions given to you, right? So this idea of what does leadership look like and how do we instill and culture that for folks to empower them, literally to empower them to not just take in information and always be the student, but to go, you know what, even right now, in your program right now, you have the ability to do real work. You're not just preparing yourself for the future. It's right here, it's you, and it's right now. And that's a mindset shift. So I know it may sound a little soft, but the data skills alone without the leadership skills, you're doing good things, but are they the ones you want to do? Are they as big as you want them to be? And I think that is really what I think of in terms of what education looks like is, again, that idea is what is possible, not just with AI tools or with AI in general, but what are you possible? What's possible for you? And that is that's a slow, and I know it feels diffuse, but that once you have that foundation, it drives a lot of things. It drives a lot of impossible things. Yeah, so I think that's what I would say. The impossible is possible if you think you can do it.
Yes.
Wow, that gave me goosebumps.
Yes,
I don't know.
yes.
Thank you for
No,
making that come out.
It's amazing. I have to quick, I hope that I can make it quick. It's a long story, but I'll try to make it quick. On that mindset, So it was during the COVID, I believe it was 2020 or 2021, something with
my voice, I'm bad.
Okay. It's 2021, and
I decided to go on take on a trip to Ghana. It all came to me. Somebody talked about it. I fell in love with the idea of going to a foster home. I kind of didn't know what I was doing. I ended up there.
so I was thinking that I'm gonna go
Teach them,
computer data science. I went there to teach them data science.
and then I go there and I figure out that, whoa, everyone else there is on a mission trip. The kids kept asking me, are you here to teach us Bible? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I hope I can talk about that. But I didn't know what I was doing.
But I had the craving, and I ended up there. And anyway, we'll talk about it. I ended up there, and and then all these questions. It was a fascinating time of mine. It brought me to a completely new perspective of humanity. I can't even speak about it. And I had no idea. I'm there. It's scary. I'm in a foster home in Ghana, outside the city. Poor area. And I'm trusting people that I have never met before. I'm sleeping in their dorm, which is like, we don't have even warm water. We take shower with cold water, all of that. And everyone else there is a Mormon on a mission trip. And they kept asking me, like, are you here to teach us religion or something? And that was the time that I figured out, ooh, I actually came somewhere to think that's what the volunteers are doing. I thought I'm volunteering for whatever that I want to teach. And I continued with that. I was like, yeah, let me teach them whatever I can teach. Took tons of trust in myself and in humans, just humans, because the stories were scary. The stories are absolutely scary, from the diseases that you can catch to the people that could harass you, to all the bad things that can happen to you. And I just, to my own beliefs, I prayed through it, and I'm like, humans are going to be fine. I don't think this is going to happen. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to entertain that idea. Yes, I'm going to take precaution, but I'm not going to entertain that idea. I'm going to stay focused. And I was trying to figure out, how do I teach these kids about dating? What kind of story do I tell them? And it all started with, I figured that if they are all lovers of religion, and I admired them, waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning, doing lots of practices, and I told myself, I gotta wake up in the morning and just talk to the universe. I gotta learn from them. And my way was like, I gotta get into their hearts, because they're all heart people. They were all about heart. There was nothing about technology about them. But so I started with like, okay, let's make a heart connection. And I did, and they touched me, and it was scary. I couldn't believe that I had so much emotions inside myself for humans. But I ended up teaching them computer. Some like very complicated Excel stuff. We came up with a project within that 7 days that we had together. We took their inventories, created some data projects for them, and then ended up with, I even made some little bit of an investment for them, get their organizer, get their basically, I don't know, the dean or whoever was the director of that place got to co-invest with me. So all these little ideas that we hear here, I wasn't in a big organization, but I had that playground. I'm like, let's do it in this playground at this small scale. And it made an impact. It did make an impact in their life, and it made an impact in my life. It changed my viewpoints in so many things. In addition to your question.
Thank you both so much for an exciting talk. We really appreciate you being here today. If you don't mind sticking around, perhaps there are some additional questions. But again, thank you, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.